Hello there. I'm Kios Ronin Beatmaker, and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. And before we get into it, if you are new to the channel, please make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and ring that notification bell. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the Egyptian Sphinx cover up. Now, if you're aware of Randall Carlson and many others out there, Robert Schock, you'll know that the Sphinx is much older than mainstream academia will like to claim. But without further ado, let us get into it. Alrighty. This article was updated May 21st, 2022. The big Egyptian Sphinx cover up. Hidden chambers, an unexcavated mound, and endless denial. In 1935, Egypt was still the main draw for archaeologists digging for answers. It was hardly more than a decade since the British Egyptologist Howard Carter discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun on November 4th, 1922, that had lain nearly undisturbed for over 3,000 years. Yet that is another amazing story still to be investigated. However, right now, our attention is focused on the latest attempt to hide the real ancient history of an unknown civilization that left us with great wonders both above and below the sands of the Giza Plateau. Here we have an image, the moment Howard Carter uncovered Tutankhamun's tomb. Keep in mind, none of the pharaohs were buried inside the pyramids. Ancient lost city unearthed in Egypt. The first news of a secret city hit the world press in the first week of March 1935. By July of that year, much more had been found, and the Sunday Express ran an article by Edward Armitage, who had just returned to England from Egypt, where he had watched the excavation of an ancient Egyptian city that was then thought to date back 4,000 years. Here we have it in the Sunday Express, London, July 7th, 1935. City of the world's first queen, the mystery of the pyramids may be solved by new excavations. Media silence. Then came silence, as if early living Egyptologists had lost all interest in this wonderful underground metropolis. All their articles during the ensuing years were centered on tombs of queens and shafts that had sunk deep into the ground to burial tombs sometime during the 24th dynasty, which was as late as 732 BC to 716 BC. It is very odd that such an immense discovery of a whole underground city dating back at least 4,000 years was ignored completely in favor of late period dynasty that almost passed without notice. Well, this is no different than all the underground cities littered throughout North America. As I've said in previous episodes of Lounge Ronin, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. You can go into old archive articles from the United States, and you can find countless articles about giants, underground cities, you name it. So it's no surprise that they would, announce something like this and quickly not talk about it. It's no different than here when we talk about the mounds in North America. They're technically pyramids. He called it a mound in the title, but they're technically pyramids. Some of them probably, erosion over time through, weather elements and cataclysms. But some of them, they're designed in that manner. Check out my two-part series on giants and mainstream academia, and also my two-part series on the giants of West Virginia. And we, look into articles that talk a lot about the structural layout of these cities of giants and a little bit of their culture and burial practices. It's very fascinating stuff. But the reason why I'm saying that there's no surprise in the media silence is like with, if you look at here with the Smithsonian, which is a federal organization, they have a department that's designed for suppressing information regarding uh, ancient civilizations of giants and what have you on North America. Check out my two-part series on the giants of West Virginia for a little more information on that. But, this whole idea of media silence is, it's par for the course. The last thing they need is hundreds of young explorers, archaeologists, anthropologists, combing this underground city because of the knowledge and the history and how it will completely, you know, contradicts mainstream academia. That's why you look at the way mainstream academia has treated Graham Hancock. He's now banned from ever stepping foot in Egypt. You look at the way they have treated, these various people who challenge the mainstream norm and the media on the credibility of what the mainstream academia is presenting. And that is something that is constantly prevalent. The censorship and the suppression of new information, new ideas, ancient information, true history, hidden history, it's more prevalent now more than ever because it just continues to contradict the narrative. And it's getting to the point where they can't really hide the truth anymore because people keep on talking about it. But I digress. Let's get back to it. Enough of a Ronin rant. Denial of previous discoveries. That was some 80 years ago, and today we have come up against a similar rose granite block wall. In the person of the former Minister of State of Antiquity Affairs, Zahi Hawass, he's an asshole. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. Who held that position, a corrupt asshole, I should say, who held that position until Egypt's revolution in 2011 that toppled Hosni Mubarak. He still has his finger in the pie, so to speak. Much has been written about the Egyptian Indiana Jones, who presents a big smile at one moment, but red rage faced the next when any unwelcome questions is posed to him. Look up, uh, look up that incident between him and Graham Hancock. This side of his character is well documented in Robert Bouval and Ahmed Osama's book, Breaking the Mirror of Heaven. However, such a temperament doesn't dully explain why Zahi Hawass has so publicly announced that there is nothing at all below the Sphinx, neither any tunnel nor a single chamber, when there are have many photos of him entering descending shafts from the head of the Sphinx, and another at the far rear of the lion body. As Are we supposed to forget completely that we have seen several times in the past and accept such details without question? They don't want you to know about it. They don't want you to know about, the library underneath the Sphinx and all sorts of incredible mysteries and truths and technology. But, that would contradict the powers to be. And we can't have that. Well, shout out to Jimmy Corsetti at Bright Insight. I highly recommend you check out his channel, especially his videos. He does an incredible job. He has a very popular and interesting theory on where the where Atlantis may have been. But his videos on the Great Sphinx are really well done and definitely bring up a lot of questions and definitely are critical of Zahi Hawass and just antiquity of mainstream media. I really highly recommend you guys check out his channel, Bright Insight. Let's continue. Statements contradict photographic evidence. Apparently, he brushed off such inquiries of hidden tunnels under the Giza Plateau and chambers under the Sphinx by saying that it wasn't possible to look deeper, as the chambers were either blocked or full of water. That may be the case, though we can see from one of the photos showing a rear downward shaft at the side of the Sphinx that the floor far below is quite dry. We do know that Hawass had climbed down ladders from the rear entrance of the Sphinx into a deep chamber in the middle layer, and then even further down to the bottom chamber, which apparently contained a very large sarcophagus, and that was filled with water, and that these scenes are all are all in a documentary film made by Fox. It is hard to imagine he could possibly think that he could later deny all that he had earlier accomplished. And here we have still images from the documentary that show Zahi Hawass ascending into the shaft. Now, if you go on Bright Insight's channel, you can actually see inside that shaft and see that sarcophagus that's underwater. A hole in the Sphinx head. Around 1798, Vivant Denon attached an image of the Sphinx, although he hadn't copied it that well. However, he no doubt knew that there was a hole on top of its head, and he had drawn an image of a man being pulled out. Here we have Vivant Denon's sketch of the Sphinx in 1798 depicts a man being pulled out of a hole in the Sphinx head. A sketch can hardly be used as proof, but in the 1920s, an aerial photo of the Sphinx taken from a hot air balloon showed that there is such an opening on the top of its head. Here we have the aerial photo that shows a hole in the Sphinx head. Right there. This is why I say you can't trust mainstream academia on anything that relates to ancient history or antiquity. You can't trust them. You just can't. Let's continue. The enigma of the Sphinx head. It seems quite clear from the totally different construction materials and the color of the Sphinx head, which we believe is not rock, but some type of man-made substance compared to its limestone and eroded body. That the head and the face of the Sphinx must have been changed from its original shape long after the monument was first carved. There is hardly any erosion on the head compared to its body. The sign of the headdress are quite smooth, and we only need glance at the mythical creature to spot the lighter color of the body compared to the darkness of the head. According to Tony Bushby, in his The Secret in the Bible, a badly fragmented Sumerian cylinder tells a tale that could easily be taken as having happened at Giza and involving a beast that had a lion head with the tunnel entrance hidden by sand. Everything now points to the Sphinx body having been sculpted out of natural stone when there was frequent heavy rainfall, and that takes us back to about the same time that Robert Duval and Robert Schoch have calculated for the construction of the Orion's Belt Pyramid, i.e., 10,450 BC. The head of the Sphinx. Here we have an image of the Sphinx, and underneath it says the head of the Sphinx appears to be man-made from yada yada yada. We got that. Let's keep it moving. Make sure you hit that like button. Much love. Two sphinxes. There have been sketches of the Giza. The word Giza in ancient Egyptian means Huen stone complex as far back as 1665. And some do show two heads peering out of the sands, one usually having female features. Here we have the an illustration, the Great Sphinx of Giza in Alfred Dapper, Description del Afrique, 1665. Note the depiction of the two sphinxes. So you have one right here, and then you have another one right here, and even more than one pyramid. Or I can't think of how many pyramids there are right now. Three, right? Yeah, three. I mean, they're not going to talk about the pyramids in the Sudan. They're not going to talk about the pyramids in China. They're not going to talk about the pyramid in Indonesia or in Greece. But I digress. Let's continue. It was an ancient Egyptian practice to inscribe two lines, which they called a khu, next to their doorways for heavenly protection, and that would lead us directly to a mound near the Sphinx, which Gary has identified and measured. Could this mound contain the buried body of a second Sphinx? One would have thought that this mysterious, large, covered shape so close to the Sphinx would have been greeted with great enthusiasm by the Egyptian authorities. Yet Hawass and Mark Leaner didn't want to listen to his theory, according to a reliable source. Here we have a photographic image that shows the Giza Plateau with proposed burial for the second Sphinx mound encircled. Gary had contacted someone in the renowned institute in Cairo that had equipment that could detect objects under the sand. That person applied for a permit to the then Supreme Council of Antiquities to investigate the mound. but they didn't respond. Apparently, no one else was granted a license to investigate the specific area of the mound where we believe a second Sphinx could be unearthed. No doubt they had a reason for it. Why the denial? Why would these two Egyptologists be so alarmed by the suggestion that there was something that had been missed for centuries? Is it possible that they don't want to reveal something beneath that mound? Is it reasonable that anyone should have so much objection to any kind of probe or even a simple aerial photography being taken, which might lead to discovery of yet another amazing wonder of the world and a wonder that would draw many more thousands of tourists to Egypt? They won't even admit to ever having examined the mystery mound themselves, and surely, had this been done, they would be the first to say so. A few years ago, Zahiwas met the Foreign Press Association in Cairo to vent his frustrations with a group of pseudoscientists whose personal attack, though television and other media had escalated to the point where it had become threatening. Apparently, he was worried that an NBC interview would support and publicize their ideas, which he suggests were purely for personal gain. He apparently said in a statement, "I want to talk about things that do not make any sense." End quote. His gesture expressed his increased frustration with what he commonly classified as pyramid idiots or pyramidots, those with views greatly at variance with the established scientific community. Quote, "They are saying secret excavations are going on around the Sphinx and are not being revealed. That is definitely not so." End quote. Zahir Was is not only a great showman and probably the most knowledgeable man in the world about Egypt, he also has achieved a lot to promote tourism for his country. However, he appears to have an agenda, and that is to keep in place a conventional understanding of ancient Egyptian history, no matter how many new findings contradict what is currently believed to be true. Here we have a book called The Giza Plateau's Secrets and a Second Sphinx Location Revealed by Gary Cannon and Malcolm Houghton. So, in case you guys are interested in doing a more deep dive, feel free to check out this book. And there you have it, a light introduction into the Egyptian Sphinx cover up. I highly recommend everyone out there, like I said, get that book, go out there, do a little more investigation by reading uh, more books about it, checking out Bright Insights channel. If you're able to, um, head over to Egypt and check out the Sphinx yourself. Uh, get to it now before things get a little hot this summer. Just saying. Um, but one thing that I am surely a believer of is that they are lying to us a lot about Egypt. I know I've seen videos. Brian Forrester has had them on his channel, showing some very curious technology. They like to tell you, they don't really have a legitimately good answer for how the limestone blocks that were from a quarry that was like 800 miles away made their way to Egypt. They don't have a really good answer. They're telling you elephants and motherfuckers just dragging rocks around. Please spare me the nonsense. I apologize for a little bit of the cursing, but this stuff really frustrates me because of the lies and the deceit, and so much of it to the extent that we're not even able to even understand what it even means to be part of this world, because they deny us the right to learn. They deny us the right to explore it. And how is that fair to us? You know, if they were to if they were to allow people the chance to um, explore these areas, allow new ideas, allow new archaeologists, new explorers to take up the helm, uh, we would have such an incredible change in our culture and society as a whole, as it would motivate people from other works of around the world to break out and do the exact same thing. But unfortunately, anytime people do those things, they are labeled a heretic. They are harassed. Um, they are at times, lose their lives. It's taken because they know too much, or they're close to revealing the truth. And this is a problem that we have. We're not allowed the ability to know what it truly means to be a human. Because if we're not allowed that ability, then we're not allowed to truly understand the history, the truth. Why are we not allowed to know about the giants that used to occupy North America? Why are we not allowed to know that, Africans occupied America, hundreds of thousands of years ago? Why are we not allowed to talk about these things? Why are we not allowed to talk about the fact that Christianity derives a lot of its concepts and ideas from ancient Kemet, Egypt, from Africa? Why are we not allowed to have these conversations openly and publicly? Because the moment you have these conversations openly and publicly, you're labeled this and that and the other. I've had my fill of being labeled this and that and the other. I've been called all sorts of random, nonsensical things just for saying words and expressing my views. So I'm over it. It doesn't bother me anymore. And it shouldn't bother you either. But when it comes to Egypt, when it comes to the Sphinx, the Giza Plateau, the pyramids, they will constantly do whatever they can to lie and steal and suppress. Zahi Was, he was arrested and caught selling artifacts. He's not a good person. He's someone he's part of the reason why Graham Hancock can't go back um, to Egypt. They're not going to talk about the fact that the water erosion on the Giza Plateau is older. They're not going to tell you about those things. They're not going to tell you that the pyramids and the Giza Plateau, they were there way before the Egyptians got there. They're not going to tell you that someone else built them. I'm not saying that the Egyptians weren't highly intelligent and sophisticated. They clearly were, since they made their way to Ireland. Clearly they were exceptional people. Made their I mean, I'm not denying that. They were clearly exceptional people. But let's be real. If they weren't the ones that built the pyramids, They damn sure as well weren't the ones that built the pyramid in Indonesia. One of the, if not one of the oldest pyramids in the world. They weren't the ones that built the pyramid in Greece, and that one's older than the pyramid in Egypt. And it's a small little guy, but it's older than the one in Egypt. I'm not going to talk about the Bosnian pyramid and how it's on the same mathematical mathematical uh, geographic and it's just mathematically exactly the same as the pyramid in Egypt. But they're not going to tell you these things. They're not going to talk about this publicly. You have to go to outside sources. You have to go to sources like Ancient Origins or Bright Insight. People out there, Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson. You have to go to the outsiders who are willing to challenge the narrative. And that's all I'm here to bring. I know in the comments I've been accused of pimping ideas, but I'm only pimping freedom of thought. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. If you're new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much, much love.